On October the 29th, 1949, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, well, he died, passed away, moved on, went forth, went west, as they say in old Egypt. And I wanted to celebrate his life today because he made a great difference to my own understanding of who I am, where I'm going in my life. He definitely helped me to understand why I wanted to wake up. I was quite lucky from a young age that I always knew that things were different and weren't as people, my peers, were trying to tell me. I kind of always saw through their lies, but didn't understand why nobody else could see it. You know, I felt a bit of an outsider for a long time. But that kind of questioning from a young age made me look into all the different philosophies and theologies from my late teens upwards. Maybe in my 20s I went off it a little bit and then came back to it, which did lead me to finding out about Gurdjieff. And I discovered Gurdjieff when I went on a trip to Egypt with John Anthony West. And many of you might know who he is. He's from the... Well, he used to do many trips to Egypt, magical trips, esoteric trips. And he was one of the people that brought back Schwaller de Lubitz's ideas of the Sphinx is much older than it is. And John Anthony West is mainly remembered these days for bringing in the geologist Robert Schoch to, well, date the Sphinx and say that it is a lot older than it is. But anyway, on this trip in Egypt, this magical trip, one of the best trips I've ever been on in my life, John Anthony West introduced me to Gurdjieff. And that changed everything. I started reading Gurdjieff's work. Okay, at first I found Beelzebub's Tales difficult. And luckily I was into science fiction books, so I kind of read it the first time as just a science fiction fairy tale. But I never gave up on it, and I kept pursuing it, and I read other books on Gurdjieff and began to get a taste for what he was trying to say. Something always rang true for me with what he was bringing across. As many of you know, his writings are quite difficult to follow sometimes. There's hidden meanings, maybe. You need to really look deep into what he's saying. And so for me, it just changed my life. It made me realise that I am on the right path, and that I was doing the right thing, and that what I was seeing to be what was supposed to be real in this world was not real, and that my inkling, my senses, my spidey senses were telling me there was something more to this life than just this. You know, what most people take on in life. And Gurdjieff obviously teaches us that, doesn't he, in his writings. I was always intrigued by the soul. Nobody could ever give me a satisfactory theory as to what the soul was or where it was. You know, I did a degree in divinity, and many of my teachers were priests or ex-priests, and they didn't like that question either. But Gurdjieff helped me to understand what a soul is. And may his soul rest in peace, which I'm sure it is. I'm sure he's managed to create his Keishjan body and ready for his soul for when he did die, to move on into the next stage of life. I don't think he got caught up in the reincarnation cycle. And I just wanted to read a bit of Gurdjieff's writings on death to remind us what this is all about. Well, it's not all about, there's lots of things about what it's about, but it's important to look at all the different ideas and theories throughout the world of what our soul is, what death is. And hopefully when you come back to Gurdjieff's writings on this, it will help you to make sense of what it is that we're here for, why we humans are on this planet. So Gurdjieff writes in All and Everything, "The sole means now for the saving of the beings of the planet Earth would be to implant again into their presences a new organ, an organ like Kundabuffer, but this time of such properties that every one of these unfortunates during the process of existence should constantly sense and be cognizant of the inevitability of his own death, as well as of the death of everyone upon whom his eyes or attention rests. Only such a sensation and such a cognizance can now destroy the egoism completely crystallized in them that has swallowed up the whole of their essence, and also that tendency to hate others which flows from it, the tendency, namely, which engenders all those mutual relationships existing there, and which serve as the chief cause of all their abnormalities, unbecoming to free-brain beings, and maleficent for them, themselves, and for the whole of the universe. For me, I realised long ago that humans live in a very strange world, and there doesn't seem to be the love that I was told about in the Bible when I was younger. There doesn't seem to be this love from everybody. I could see that people were lying to each other all the time. Many people didn't like other people. I could see it on TV, see it in real life, and so forth. So I knew that something was wrong, and that we do live, as he says, in a very illogical way, and that we are unfortunate, that we can't live an existence where we are living truly as human beings with full understanding for each other. It seems like people live their lives thinking they're never going to die, so they're never preparing for their death. They're just living for the materialism of today. And it is a strange thing to bring up, because when I talk about, or try to bring up, the idea of death to other people, not necessarily in the Gurdjieff work, other people in everyday life or in other traditions, they find the subject uncomfortable, or they say to me, we must only talk about good and light things, because they seem to see death as, well, it is the end, but it's not the end, because we know through the Gurdjieff work that if we work on ourselves, we move on, hopefully, to the next stage, or we get caught up in the reincarnation cycle and come back. So it's never the end. Death happens to one and all, except for those lucky few such as Elijah, the prophet, who was ascended up, and as we all know, Christ Jesus, resurrected, he came back. And then there's the Count Germain, who found the elixir to life, but I wonder if he managed to develop his etheric body enough so that he can keep coming back and keeping his own physical body preserved in some kind of magical way, which would give him enough time to hopefully develop on himself so that he could develop his Keshjan body, so that when he does finally pass on, and maybe the other bodies, because it's not just the Keshjan bodies, there's other bodies that are needed to keep our soul going, if we want to go on to the other realms, onto higher places. But coming back to the quote that I just gave from All and Everything, that is something that I was always questioning. Why do people hate each other? Why do I sometimes feel hate for other people? Obviously I've picked up that habit from seeing other people doing it. What is happening here? And those of you that have read the Gurdjieff writings know that it was all to do with the Kunda buffer that was put in us, but then it was taken out. But we were so used to thinking in them kind of terms that the Kunda buffer made us see life upside down and topsy-turvy, that we still feel like that, where the Gurdjieff work's trying to make us see it upright and with clear eyes, you know, that clear vision forward, the veil is lifted kind of thing. So I always will be grateful to Mr. Gurdjieff's writings, because for me it was confirmation that I knew that things were different, but I didn't know quite how or what to. I didn't have the brain power to work it out for myself. I needed his writings to explain the details for me. And I just wanted to do a quote from Life is Real, Only Then When I Am. They began to give themselves up to the contemplation of the inevitability of their own death. O ye holy higher forces and immortal spirits of our ancestors, help us to keep death always before our eyes, and not to succumb to temptation. It would be desirable for all, for God, for the deceased, for you, for me, and even for the whole of humanity, if at the death of any person, instead of the process of the expression of senseless words, the process of the real grasping of your own forthcoming death would take place in you. Only the complete realization by man of the inevitability of his own death can destroy those factors implanted thanks to abnormal life, of the expression of different aspects of our egoism, this cause of all evil in our common life. So with those words, I hope that you go and contemplate your own death and everybody else's death. And this being today, the day that I've put this show up on YouTube, being the death day of Mr. George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, may we give thanks, praise to one and all, and hopefully go forward with a more awakening idea of what it is we're doing with our lives, what it is we're aiming for, and what it is we can put in place of that kunda buffer that's been removed, that's not there now. We need to change, transform. We want to crystallize in the right way. And as Gurdjieff says in Views from the Real World, you have to live through being identified with all the attractions of the first river. You must but die to this first river. This does not mean physical death. From that death there is no necessity to rise again, because if there is a soul, and it is immortal, it can get along without the body, the loss of which we call death. Christ spoke of the death which can take place in life, the death of the tyrant from whom our slavery comes. Go forth and be a free man, free woman, free human. Let's all be free together. Thank you, Mr. Gurdjieff, and thank you for listening.